Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mainstream Modular, a podcast brought to you by Guerdon Modular. I'm your host today, Tyler Curtin. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of the show. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Matthew Wickersham on the show. Now, he is a principal at AMJ Construction, and he's going to be telling us all about the project at 6th and San Julian in Los Angeles. So, Matthew, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We are thrilled to have you along, Matthew. So before we dive too far into the project, let's just get some of the basics and some of the details about who you are and what you do at AMJ. So tell us a little bit more about how long AMJ has been working within modular construction projects.
Sure. Yeah. So as a principal at AMJ Construction Management, the firm offers a soup and nuts construction management services for primarily the affordable housing services market here in Los Angeles. Over the past several years, we've grown and expanded into the San Diego and the Bay Area markets as well. About 5 years ago, I initiated a modular division inside of AMJ. And really what we had endeavored to do at the time was to push the idea, the deliverable of modular as a solution to the affordable housing crisis in the city of Los Angeles. It presented an opportunity to be able to bring to market occupiable units at a much faster rate than the LA market has seen before. And so that was really the goal. And it took us several years of feasibility studies and advanced meetings before the first project, which is 6th and San Julian, really penciled and was able to be put into construction.
That's some excellent stuff and some great background, I think, for our conversation here today. And before we dive, again, too far into the project at 6th and San Julian, I know that you're also on 2 task forces, right? So tell us a little bit about those task forces and just give us some background on what you do there as well.
Yeah. So as we started to get, more and more into the weeds of modular, one of the things that we identified was that there was kind of an unknown in terms of how the city handled modular construction, right? And it goes into plan check and permitting and inspections. And, the city had some informational bulletins that had been, issued, but there still was just a general lack of understanding. So we got asked on behalf of the mayor's office of the city of Los Angeles to head up a task force of consultants, which, included code consultants and architectural design consultants, to basically develop, negotiate, and draft a memorandum of understanding between all of the departments of the city of Los Angeles. And this was planning and public works and fire and building and safety, but to basically create a path of how the city should plan check and permit and inspect modular projects. And so that negotiation, took almost a year and a half. Of course, it happened right in the middle of the COVID pandemic. And so that took its toll because, we had a lot of in-person meetings to hash through those details. But, that was the big one for the mayor's office. The second was part of it was an HHH innovation team. So many people have become familiar, especially in the affordable housing market, of the HHH bonds or the funding that got put through by the city as an effort to fund upwards of 10,000 affordable housing units in the city of Los Angeles. There was a group of developers, which included LA Family Housing, Abode Communities, and Mercy Housing, that came together with the idea of approaching the city with an idea to get a grant for pre-construction money to really advance this idea of modular. And so we worked with that team as well to work with other modular factories and developers, and using our background from the MOU to come up with pricing scenarios and feasibility studies to help identify, early opportunities as a result of that task force. But ultimately, that task force was successful. Those developers were awarded a pocket of money, which is going to result in the construction of 6 modular projects here in the city of Los Angeles over the course of the next couple of years.
Fantastic stuff. Well, let's dive into that project then at 6th and San Julian, because I'm dying to learn a little bit more about it. So give us some of the goals and the background of this particular project, and also tell us a little bit more about the role that Guerdon is playing in it as well.
Sure. So 6th and San Julian is being developed, as the name says, right? It's on the corner of 6th Street and San Julian. And, for many that may not be familiar with the landscape of the city of Los Angeles, that corner is really smack dab down in the heart of our homeless problem, adjacent to Skid Row. And so it's a very public project, and it's right in the middle of this. And I think it speaks to the goals that we're trying to accomplish here. And so 610 San Julian, right, is the construction of 90 affordable housing units, and it's pushing this idea of how can we build it faster, right? And given where it's at, and given the challenges of that market, it's created some opportunities and some challenges. Now, this project from the beginning, being that it's kind of the first, there was challenges along the way of trying to identify partners, both on the design side and on the construction side. And so the role that Guerdon played in this project was, they came in very late to the project, but they came in at a time where we desperately needed a factory partner that was going to be able to deliver this project. And so, we had reached out to Guerdon, and, they stepped in and they took control. And, we had to go through some redesign with them to optimize the product for their assembly line. But ultimately, Guerdon, brought a huge amount of experience to the team to be able to get the product on the line into construction. And we're going to be looking forward to actually setting those units here in the next couple of months.
You started off just by talking about the location of this particular project. Are there any unique challenges posed by where this project is taking place? And, does that make it a particularly unique project in any way?
Yeah, I think it does. I think that for me personally and professionally, AMJ Construction Management, our core was built on the support and the development of permanent supportive housing in the city of Los Angeles. And, it's at pandemic levels here and what we're trying to do. And so I think the opportunities and the challenges of this project speak directly to what I think this industry is trying to achieve. And so, some of the challenges that you see, right? There's a tremendous amount of unhoused individuals that reside in this area. And so on a regular basis, we have tents and we have other types of shelters that are being constructed, around the perimeter of the job site. Those have to be sort of, relocated on a daily basis. Security is a huge risk. There's a lot of break-ins in the area. And the opportunity of modular here, right? Because in a stick frame project, you figure, okay, well, lumber gets delivered to a job site. They build floor by floor, right? But in the meantime, your building is exposed, right? And we're going to be looking at an opportunity here where over the course of 3.5 weeks, we're going to erect 5 stories of modular units. And at the completion of that, we're going to have a secured structure. It's going to have an envelope. It's going to have a perimeter. And it's really going to create an opportunity where the workers are actually going to be able to work in a much safer environment because of how the project is going to be assembled.
You started taking us through it there, but take us through the calculus just for going with modular for this particular project. What went into the decision-making process for that, and why did you end up choosing modular in the long run?
Yeah, so it's an interesting story, right? Because I think there's 2 major components that everybody considers when they're looking at modular: time savings and cost savings, right? For us in Los Angeles, unfortunately, we don't seem to be yielding much cost savings. And I think that's a result of the fact that the delivery model is fairly new in the city of Los Angeles. I think the construction industry as a whole is fairly resistant to change. And I think a lot of times, whether it's because the subcontractors and the contractors don't fully understand the product, or maybe there's just a resistance to it in general, but we're just not seeing the cost savings that we should be seeing from taking the majority of this work offsite. And so I think the real advantage with 610 San Julian came from the time savings, right? So, and came from what I kind of outlined about being able to erect this building like that and not have, piece workers erecting a building, bit by bit in this environment. And I mean, just to give you a general sense, right? I mean, a 5-story structure, each floor would take a minimum of 5 weeks to frame, right? So you're looking at, 25 to 30 weeks to basically top out a structure and then build an envelope to secure a structure, which is now going to be done through modular means in 3.5 weeks.
Yeah, that's a great point. The time savings there, and then also that added security element that you talked about, I think is really important and an important thing to note in conversations like this. So that's a great point, and it all kind of goes back into that conversation about location. And I know you mentioned this a little bit off the top, and I was going to ask a question a little bit more specifically on it, and got sidetracked by the conversation about location and all that sort of stuff. But tell us, fill us out on all the details about AMJ's involvement and the role that you're playing as a company, but also personally with this project.
Yeah. So, I mean, as a company, right? So last year, we celebrated our 10-year anniversary. For myself personally, I've been in construction management in the affordable housing market for about 22 years now. And so, for us, both in the development of permanent supportive housing over that long of a period of time, and to be driving this initiative to develop these units faster to support the city's move and goals to provide permanent supportive facilities for these individuals is huge. But also from the modular perspective, right? To be involved in something that we started 5 years ago to try to move these initiatives forward because we saw opportunity in this delivery model. So I think with 6 San Julian for us, I mean, it continues to be forefront of our minds on the goals that we serve as a company to continue to advance the affordable housing development in the city of Los Angeles. But from a modular side, I'm very excited to see, this start to become a reality for the city, and for the politicians and the city leaders to see these buildings go up and to see the opportunity in hope that it starts to drive more interest and more support for this product type.
One of the things that you and I talked about just even before we started recording this podcast was just the simple fact that LA needs housing and they need it quickly, right? And that was one of the things you mentioned when talking about the decision to go with modular. But talk about the need for housing in Southern California and in Los Angeles specifically, because that's a need, right? And you're helping to fill that need with what you're doing and projects like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's as I mentioned before, it's at an utter pandemic level. I mean, we're seeing, right? I mean, there was a Netflix documentary, Lead Me Home, which actually was nominated for Academy Award that speaks to the same issue, right? And it documents not only in Los Angeles, but in the Bay Area and Seattle as well. I mean, we're fighting a losing battle on a regular basis, and so things have to change. And, for us in our role, we come in to support these developers, and we sort of create that bridge, right, between the developer and the construction. And we're trying to figure out new innovative ways to meet these goals and to continue to advance. And that's where modular came from, and the promise that it holds, whether it's going to be able to meet the rising tide of homelessness that we have in the city of Los Angeles. I mean, we can hope, but I think what we try to do, and this is why these types of podcasts are so great for us, is I feel like that AMJ, I mean, we play an extremely small part in this industry, but we operate on a principle of knowledge transfer. I mean, we are an open book, and we share the metrics, we share the information, we share where we've succeeded and where we failed, because for us, and for me personally, I honestly believe that the only way that we meet this goal head on is together, right? And sharing this information and distributing this information so that we start to build more knowledge and, more economies of scale to continue to make these delivery vehicles more efficient.
Yeah, that's a great point. And my follow-up question was going to be just about education in general and just how important it is to educate the industry, to educate as many people as possible just on the benefits that modular construction can provide to maybe help overcome some of those misconceptions that may still exist in the marketplace. Do you feel like that's an important thing?
I do, and that's why, I mean, I sincerely appreciate invitations like this to participate in podcasts. I teach a class at UCLA. I've been given the opportunity to come there now for the past 2 years and do guest lectures on modular construction. Teaching the new wave of developers and urban developers about modular and about where we're seeing the advancements. And so I am, a big goal of what we do is to try to push that and to try to get the information out there, and we take every opportunity that we have to share that information.
So how do you see modular continuing to grow forward, on the backs of projects like this and seeing the successful implementation of modular constructions in different places and in different areas? How do you expect to see the industry continue to grow?
So I think that we have a few challenges that we have to overcome, to truly see success, and one of those is knowledge, not only of the developers, but of the general construction personnel. And, we've been fortunate to forge partnerships with a small group of general contractors that operate in the LA market and beyond. And with their partnerships, we've been trying to branch out to subcontractor markets, because that's truly where the rubber meets the road. And I feel like that the success of this delivery vehicle is going to be achieved, because we need to get mechanical, electrical, plumbing subcontractors to fully understand how these vehicles work and how they are a piece of the puzzle. And so, I think that's going to be a big challenge that we're going to have to meet head on. And we're working to continue to advance that. And I think technology plays a part of that as well. And there's factories out there that are working on abilities to sort of reach back and create 3D design vehicles that can start to incorporate these types of lessons learned to translate that knowledge out there. I think at the same time too, I think the challenges that we have is on the financing and development world, right? I mean, in modular, the cost of construction gets shifted, much further up in the timeline, and you're in a position where you're having to pay line hold deposits and material deposits to a factory even before much of these developers close on the development. And when you're talking about affordable housing, most of these developers are nonprofits, right? So there's not huge, they're not sitting on huge piles of cash that they can afford to make these big deposits. And so forging relationships with the investment community and to, advance escrow accounts and, lines of credit to help these developers, tap into these, right? And then I think the third challenge is on the design side, right? I think understanding and adapting the design of these modulars for the city of LA market. I think a lot of what we've taken so far has been vehicles that have been more adapted for the Bay Area, and we're trying to plug and play in the LA market. And I think we've seen some challenges there, specifically as it relates to sort of code and the differences in the markets. So I think that's another challenge that we're working on sort of avidly with engineers, trying to come up with more efficient ways and working with factories now during pre-construction and design consultants to make that more efficient. So, we've got our hands full. I mean, we're finally seeing construction of modular in LA, but there's still a lot of work to be done to continue to make this, into what we think it can be for the city.
That's some just fantastic thoughts on the future and what it looks like and the work that remains to be done. So excellent stuff. Matthew, as we start to wrap up our conversation here today, what do you want to leave listeners and viewers with? Just any final thoughts, anything that we haven't maybe discussed yet that you think is important to know, or just a main idea that you want people to walk away with here today. So let me turn it over to you for just any final thoughts you have.
Yeah, when we do lessons and we teach classes and I do outreach to the community and we talk, it really is knowledge transfer, right? And I think there's nothing that we do as a company or as a service provider in the industry that is proprietary. I think that we push ourselves to the absolute limits as a consultant service to provide for the industry and for the community. And I think that as a whole, if we truly want to meet these challenges, these homelessness crises head on, I think that many more companies are going to need to wade in on this and be willing to help and be willing to share resources and develop more efficient means. And so as we look to the future, that's our hope, is that we're going to start to see more experts and more agencies and individuals that are gonna come to the table with solutions, and hopefully we're going to start to see improvement in our city.
Matthew, if people want to reach out and learn more about what you're doing at AMJ, or maybe even ask questions about how you're doing what you're doing, or maybe just even learn more about modular in general, how can they reach out and get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I mean, we've got opportunities through our website. People can reach out. So we are amjcm.com is our landing page, and there's opportunities to reach out to them there. Obviously, people can find me on LinkedIn in terms of what we're posting and the opportunities that we have there. And so those will be the two best opportunities for people to make contact. But we strongly encourage it. I mean, we're here, happy to enter the conversation, answer any questions that people may have.
AMJCM is the website, so make sure to go there for more information, or if you want to reach out. Or, of course, you can get in touch with Matthew on LinkedIn as well. Matthew Wickersham, principal at AMJ Construction. Matthew, thanks so much for joining us here on this episode of Mainstream Modular and sharing some of your expertise and your experience and telling us more about the project at 6th and San Julian. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Appreciate the time, Tyler. Thank you.
Absolutely. And everyone, thank you for tuning into this episode of Mainstream Modular. We appreciate it very much. Of course, for more episodes of the show, make sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and that way you can stay up to date with the latest. You can also visit Guerdon's website for more information about Guerdon and what they're doing in the world of modular as well. And stay tuned. We'll be back soon with more episodes of the podcast and more conversations like this one. But for this one today, for our guest today, Matthew Wickersham, I've been your host, Tyler Kern. Thanks for joining us.